college football is really just right around the corner. But I mean, the reason I wanted to have you on, Gary, I listened to your podcast, your CBS sports podcast, and you guys were talking about the Supreme Court decision and how it changes football and how it changes really all of college sports, and the NCAA. It's just completely changed. I led my show with that take. I mean, what is your belief that what's the next step for the NCAA now that all of this has happened? Supreme Court, NIL, Mark Emmert coming out saying, it's time to rethink college sports. What does that mean?
It means that they're tired of getting sued and losing lawsuits and spending tens of millions of dollars on attorney's fees. And so I think the NCAA, more or less, the future is that they're going to run championship events. They're going to organize and put on and pull off the NCAA tournament, men's and women's, and they're going to put on the College World Series, and they're going to put on a track and field championship, but they're going to be out of the business of limiting what student athletes are allowed to accept, because it wasn't just when they lost the Austin case, but it was they lost the Austin case, and then Justice Kavanaugh, accompanied that ruling by more or less saying this is strictly about this thing, limiting academic benefits, and it was a pretty narrow scope. We didn't have an opportunity to rule on amateurism in general and some of your other rules. But just know that we have real problems with some of your other rules. And Brett Kavanaugh more or less said the next person who sues the NCAA for limiting them in some way is going to lose that case. Wow. And then they can appeal, and they're going to lose that case. And if it comes all the way back to us again at the Supreme Court, you're going to lose again. So be real careful. And I do not think it's an accident or a coincidence that the NCAA, within a few weeks of that happening, basically decided we're going to let schools and states determine how they handle name, image, and likeness. We're not going to be the one who gets sued next time for limiting anybody. They're just getting out of the way, which honestly is something a lot of people thought they should have done a long time ago.
Yes, I 100% agree with you on that, Gary. And I was listening to your podcast, Eye on College Basketball, with Matt Norlander. It was an old one from June when this first came down, the Supreme Court decisions. And one of the things that you were talking about was exactly what you just said. And now as I think about this, I look at, we had an inbounds and out of bounds question that we did a couple segments ago where Michigan is going to allow student athletes to make money on selling jerseys. Georgia's not going to allow that to happen because it's all now down to the individual schools. How does that inequity get worked out, if it does at all?
I'm not sure it will, because the NCAA is not going to step in and create a rule that applies to every university in all 50 states, because they recognize that limiting student athletes' ability to earn in the way that students are to earn is going to lead to bad things for them, very expensive bad things. So that's why they've sort of stepped to the side and said, hey, listen, if Congress wants to pass a national law, that state law someday, that's our hope, and then we'll let Congress pass that law and we'll be legally in the clear. But anything short of that, we're just going to let the states and the schools handle it. So in any state where there is a name, image, and likeness law on the books or, set to go on the book, that law will be what rules the schools in that state go by. But in states without laws, I live in North Mississippi, just south of Memphis. So I'll just, in Mississippi, if there weren't a law, Ole Miss could write its rules, and Mississippi could write its rules, and Southern Miss could write its rules, and you write them however you want, whatever you're comfortable with. And from the NCAA's perspective, that's what they want, because if student athletes feel like they have a legal case to bring, well, now you're bringing against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, or Southern Miss, not the NCAA.
Yeah.
And so right now, undeniably, it is an unbalanced playing field, and it will become a recruiting tool. I mean, it already is a recruiting tool for universities. There are coaches, just trust me when I tell you, who are making it clear to prospective student athletes and moms and dads and high school coaches and grassroots coaches, this is what's available to you if you come to our school, and it might not be available to you at another school. I don't think it's an accident that Nick Saban earlier today, while speaking publicly, pointed out that the Alabama quarterback is already making nearly $1 million off of his name, image, and likeness rights.
Yep.
That sends a message to every prospective quarterback in the country. Boy, if you're the quarterback at Alabama, you're going to make real money. Are you going to be able to make that as the quarterback somewhere else? You described it accurately. There is an inequity right now that, in theory, I think people in college athletics would like to replace with something where we're all operating with the same set of guidelines. But I'm not sure we're ever going to be there. And so what you hope is that you're in a state or at a school that allows your student athletes to benefit and profit without limitations, because those are the places, that some student athletes are going to prefer, especially ones that have a real ability to make real money while they're in college.
Yeah, you're right. That is the decentralization that Mark Emmert is essentially talking about. We're chatting with Gary Parrish, CBS Sports college basketball analyst. Another question for you. This one, college basketball specific, Gary, because I look at all of the one and dones in college basketball, or at least those guys who think they're one and dones, and they go for a year and they bounce, or even those that are not even going to college because of the overtime elite or the G League alternative path that some of these guys have options to. Do you think that this is going to incentivize some kids to actually stay in school, right, who might not be ready to go to the NBA? They're stars in college, but they want to bounce because they know they got to get paid. Like it is what it is, whether it's their socioeconomic upbringing or they just want to make money for playing basketball. You think it's going to incentivize some to stay now as opposed to bouncing and getting kicked off to Europe or wherever else they go when they fail?
There is no question, and that's why I've always thought this would be good for college basketball as opposed to bad for college basketball, because there's a real talent drain on the sport, if we're being honest. In college football, Trevor Lawrence becomes the starting quarterback at Clemson. He's amazing, and you got 2 more years of watching that. Whatever the equivalent of Trevor Lawrence is in basketball, let's call him Zion Williamson. Once you decide, it's December and this young man at Duke is a phenomenon, well, enjoy him for the next 3 months because you'll never see him again in a Duke uniform.
Yep.
And it's not just that those guys are leaving, because those guys have been leaving for a while. It's the player who's going to be picked 52nd, who could be a first-team college All-American if he came back to school, but he just wants to be picked 52nd, and if he's going to be on a 2-way contract with an NBA franchise, hey, in some cases, that's still more money than your parents ever made.
Yep.
Let's go do that. Well, now, with name, image, and likeness rights being a reality, that same player who's going to be picked 52nd in the draft, but who, if he came back to school, would be a first-team preseason All-American, if he's at a high-major program, there's real opportunities for him. Like, he might be able to make $400,000, $600,000, $1 million, if you're at the right school and it's got the right corporate backing. So now you're not just weighing a cost of attendance stipend and scholarship against whatever professional contract you can get wherever. You are weighing an opportunity to make real money while in college against an opportunity to make, in many cases, less money somewhere other than college and other than the NBA.
Yeah.
Trust me, nobody wants to play in the G League. Nobody wants to go to Turkey. Nobody wants to go into anything other than the NBA. They just ultimately do it sometimes because of the money. Well, now legally, for a lot of these guys, you're going to be able to make a significant amount of money in college, and I think you're going to find out. We're all going to find out very soon that is the preferable option to the other options. In other words, I don't think it'll be the end of the G League Ignite program or Overtime Elite, but some of those players who are going that path are going strictly to make the money.
Yeah, you're right.
If you gave them a choice between playing at Kentucky or playing with the G League Ignite, they'd want to play with Kentucky, but they like the $500,000 the G League Ignite was putting on the table. Well, now you can maybe, in fact, probably get $500,000 for going to Kentucky, so why not just do that?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing going to Kentucky is you have to actually go to class to stay academically eligible. Gary, before I let you go, you mentioned Overtime Elite. It feels, they're signing 16-year-olds. This is a high school alternative, not necessarily a college alternative. Is there legs in this thing, this high school? It feels like AAU but better, right? And they have, some academic, programming that goes on. Obviously, they're getting paid some money, but does this thing have some viability to it?
We'll see. It is comparable on some level to, the European soccer clubs that create these academies, and they get, obviously gifted young people into their facility, under their roof, and really focus on developing them for what is probably going to be their career, which is playing professional soccer.
Yeah.
That's what this is for American basketball players. And so, I'm happy to watch young people get paid real money to go train to be basketball players. Like, it's a nice opportunity for people who want to pursue it. I am a little skeptical of whether, as you put it, it has legs.
Yeah.
Because, listen, there are some people who are in charge of this and financially backing it who are way smarter than I am and way wealthier than I am. The founder of Amazon who went to space today being one of them. So they've got real money behind this thing.
Yeah.
But how do you ever make money? I'm not sure of that.
I agree.
Nobody's going to want to watch this on TV. Nobody's going to stream this in any sort of meaningful way. So I'm skeptical that it's actually a moneymaker. And ultimately, even super wealthy people don't like to keep doing things that lose money, even if it's pennies, relatively speaking. So I'm skeptical it'll be here in 10 years. But it is a very real thing right now, and it's an option some young people are taking advantage of.
No, you're absolutely right. Gary, you're a real friend, and I appreciate you joining us, explaining a lot of these new happenings that are going on in NCAA college sports. Appreciate you, Gary.
Tiki, it's always my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Talk soon. Gary Parrish, CBS Sports college basketball analyst. He's also the host of the Eye on College Basketball podcast and a host of other media ventures. He's great, and I love his Southern accent, so we love having him on. Gary Parrish is the man.